Taking tea is a polite ritual carried out by millions around the world. Well, rough is good enough out here. If you like the odd cuppa, confusing tea brewed out here in the bush with something known as bush tea would be a mistake. Those still around to tell of their experience with bush tea agree it's bad enough to kill a brown dog and make a black dog sick.
Strange brew, kill what's inside of you.
I put 4 teaspoons full in the kettle, boiled it up and mixed it with a bit of jasmine to give it a bit of flavour, tipped it into the cup and drank 4 cups full.
That turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes Steve Rhodes has ever made, because very soon after drinking that bush tea, he began to feel very strange indeed. He couldn't even manage a short walk to the kitchen.
I just lost all the coordination between my legs and arms and what have you. And I dragged myself up to my feet again and I wandered off to another room, and everything appears to be further away than it is. I mean, you approach a door, you think you're about to go through that door, and in actual fact, you know, it's miles away and you just fall over.
These dried leaves mixed with hot water are the sole ingredients of the powerful and unforgiving tea. They're from Duboisia leichhardtii, better known as the Australian Corkwood Tree. As it happens, Aborigines were the first to discover this is no ordinary leaf. On walkabout, they'd chew Duboisia to relieve pangs of hunger and fatigue. And when it came to finding food, they could make fishing easier by scattering some of the leaves on the water. Stupefied fish would float to the surface, dazed enough to be hand-caught by the Aborigines. Perhaps they even passed the expression, stunned mullet, onto the white man. The drug hyoscyamine is now used to stun surgery patients before they're taken to the operating table. The extremely powerful injection numbs the nervous system and stops fluid secretions, so it's a very useful drug. Overseas manufacturers of the pharmaceutical get the main ingredient from these rolling plains in southeast Queensland. Not from the earth, but what's growing in it. Duboisia leichhardtii, the tree from which bush tea is made. The branches and twigs are useless. As the Aborigines discovered centuries before, the drug is in the leaf. It's dried, put in bags, and sent to Germany and Japan where it's processed. People working at all stages of the operation know how dangerous the drug is. Just handling the leaf can cause bizarre side effects.
If they get small particles of leaf in their eyes, it can dilate their eyes. Also, if they get too much skin absorption, they can become intoxicated and they can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, forget things and go for walkabouts and what have you.
Duboisia has a mightier kick than marijuana, and it's not a prohibited plant. So it's little wonder that unwelcome young thrill seekers have gone bush for a taste of the stuff.
Oh, a few years ago we had a rather funny incident where 3 fellows from Brisbane turned up and they crept into a plantation, got a few leaves and mixed it up with some coffee. And one fellow was in a bathtub filled with water, and another fellow was thought he was a butterfly. Another fellow was pretty crook. He nearly killed himself. He finished up in hospital.
If it were bush tea these people were drinking, they'd certainly be jiggling, and they'd probably think they were in Italy, though they'd almost certainly be flat on the floor. Back at Steve Rhodes' house, a near-lethal dose of bush tea meant there was plenty to see.
Well, I managed to get outside and I walked out into the street and stood on the footpath and I saw this amazing cavalcade of Nazi stormtroopers goose-stepping up and down the street. And it was as clear as a bell. I could hear them shouting, Sieg Heil, and I could see the moonlight glinting on their bayonets. I could see the Nazi swastikas, I could hear the crash of the jackboots. And then I saw this huge Panzer tank coming up the street. And in actual fact, what was happening, it was the rubbish collection service coming round. And my dogs, which are quite big, they're Irish wolfhounds, enormous creatures, shrunk down to the size of mice. And I remember running around the lounge room saying the dogs are hiding under the settee, and trying to get them out.
There's no question that experimentation with bush tea is dangerous and can kill. Even people who want something a little more adventuresome than this have plenty of safe teas from which to choose. But if you want to feel vile, like you're waiting for the surgeon's knife, rather than feel safe with the knowledge that you'll be alive tomorrow, try bush tea.
If I'd been 1 hour later in getting to hospital, I would have died. My heartbeat had slowed down to 1 beat a minute. And I ended up in intensive care for a day and then had to spend another day in another ward, you know, drying out. I was on oxygen, had drips stuck in me and all sorts of things.
The director of the Poisons Information Centre in Brisbane wishes people would stick to ordinary tea.
Obviously someone who wound up being admitted to an intensive care unit was very sick, and you know, he was obviously, I think anyone in that situation is potentially close to death.
What would you say to anyone contemplating brewing up a cup of bush tea tonight?
Well, it's obviously an experiment that they're going to be carrying out. It's a cross between an experiment and Russian roulette, and that sounds like a bad combination to me. I think I'd steer clear of it.